Good day everyone, I am going to discuss the Customs Memorandum Order number 22 series of 2010 Operational Provisions. Section 13 Statutory Provisions on Entrance and Clearance. The provisions of Section 1001 to 1025 of the Tariff and Customs Code of the Philippines as amended on entrance and clearance of vessels are deemed incorporated in this manual. Section 14 Free Arrival. A. Notice of Arrival NOA with estimated time of arrival ETA. A. The shipping agent or representative of any vessel engaged in foreign trade entering any of the Philippine ports of entry shall notify the Piers and Inspection Division, Bay Service Section, or its equivalent office of the vessel's arrival and all other particulars at least 24 hours in advance. B. Upon receipt of the Notice of Arrival NOA, the Customs Inspector or E2M OIC of the Piers and Inspection Division, Bay Service Section, or its equivalent office shall perform the following functions. First, electronically verify the vessel registry number, principal, and other vessel information through Client Proper Registration System or CPRS. Number 2, input the estimated time of arrival ETA in the E2M custom systems. Number 3, encode the time and date in the system and affix his signature on the hard copy of the Notice of Arrival. The last one is furnish the Customs Boarding Team a copy of the Proceed Notice of Arrival or NOA. B. Assignment of Customs Boarding Team. The Customs Boarding Team shall be assigned by the Chief Bay Service Section or equivalent office through duly signed assignment order. The following customs personnel shall be the members of the Customs Boarding Team. First is Customs Senior Boarding Officer. Second is Customs Inspector. The third one is Customs Guards. C. Submission of advance electronic manifests before arrival of vessels engaged in foreign trade through E2M custom system and penalties. The submission of electronic copy of inward foreign manifests and electronic copy of consolidated cargo manifests must be done through any of the value-added service providers accredited with a BOC. The EIFM in case of shipping lines must be electronically submitted at least 12 hours before arrival of the carrying vessel. The ECCM in case of non-vessel operating common carrier, cargo consolidator, co-loader, break bulk agent must be submitted at least 6 hours before arrival of the carrying vessel. Registration of e-manifest. Only the Deputy Collector for Operations can approve the request and execute the manual registration through the direct register function and E2M. A late or non-compliant submission fee will be charged for this procedure following the schedule of fines provided in Section 2521 of the Tariff and Customs Code of the Philippines as amended. First is late submission. A. First offense is 10,000. The second offense is 20,000. Third offense is 30,000. Number 2. Non-compliant submission, 30,000. Section 15. Arrival. A. Documents, permits. First is quarantine certificate for incoming vessels from a foreign port. Entry of vessels from any foreign port or place outside of the Philippines shall not be permitted until they have obtained a quarantine certificate issued under the authority of the Bureau of Quarantine. However, if a vessel has already been issued a quarantine certificate in the first Philippine port of entry, she will not be required to undergo another quarantine formalities at succeeding ports of call in the Philippines. Number 2. Entrance of vessel from a foreign port. Upon arrival of a vessel from a foreign port, BOC OPM Form Number 9, oath of entering vessel from a foreign port with customs documentary stamp duly accomplished by the master in 4 copies shall be presented to the office of the Customs Clearance Officer within 24 hours. C. Documents to be produced by master upon entry of vessel. The following customs properly accomplished shall be submitted by the master to the Customs Senior Boarding Officer. A. Quarantine certificate or pratique. B. Clearance of vessel from last port of call. C. Original and 4 copies of inward foreign manifest duly signed by the master. Letter D. 3 copies of each of the following. Number 1. Crew list. 2. Passengers list. 3. Passengers list for aliens as required by immigration law enforced in the Philippines. 4. Copy of original duplicate of bills of lading. 5. Bonded store list. 6. Narcotics and dangerous drug list. 7. Ship stores list. 8. Mail list. 9. Firearms and ammunition list. 10. Cruise declaration list. 11. Parcel list. 12. Shipping articles and register of the vessel of the Philippines Registry. E. Through cargo manifest, if any, which shall be deposited to the Customs Inspector and shall be returned to the master prior to departure to other ports. F. cargo stowage plan or hatch list. G. A passenger vessel, 3 copies of disembarking passengers list and their baggage declaration. The customs senior boarding officer shall, after carefully comparing the copies with the original manifest, stamp each of such manifests on the last page thereof with a rubber stamp provided for the purpose, and verify that the necessary information required in accordance with Section 12, Item Number 4, hereto is contained therein. 4. Inward Foreign Manifest, IFM, and Consolidated Cargo Manifest, CCM contents. The hard copy of the Inward Foreign Manifest, required to be submitted by the master of the vessel to the boarding officer, shall contain the following information. A. Bill of lading number. B. Marks and numbers of cartoons, drums, boxes, crates, and other forms of protective packaging for break bulk. C. Container and seal number if containerized and initials. FCL if full container load, and LCL if less container load. Letter D. Number of packages. E. Kind of packages, cartoons, boxes, crates, drums, and etc. F. Contents of description of cargo. G. Shipper. H. Consignee. I. Gross weight in metric tons. J. Measurement in cubic meters. K. Port of origin. L. Notified party. Distribution of Inward Foreign Manifest, IFM hard copies. The Inward Foreign Manifest shall be distributed to the following offices. A. Original copy, Pierce and Inspection Division, EID or equivalent office. B. 1 copy of Commission on Audit, COA, Resident Auditor through the Office of the Commissioner. C. 1 copy of Intelligence Group. D. 1 copy of Assessment and Operations Monitoring Group. 5. Permits for discharge and lading of cargo. Unless the vessel has put into in distress, the Customs Senior Boarding Officer shall, upon placing the vessel under customs surveillance and control, issue a general permit. Such permit, however, shall not constitute an authority for the loading of export cargo or delivery of import cargo at shipside without the required entries or permits, as the case may be. The general permit shall be endorsed by the customs inspector assigned on board the vessel, mentioned in the permit at the back thereof, showing whether all imports cargoes has been discharged at the port or not. Such permit shall be included in his report after the termination of his assignment on board a vessel. 6. Endorsement of permits. The following permits shall be endorsed on the reverse side thereof. A. The general permit. B. The shipside permit. C. Permits for the sending of special consignments of cargo to the piers or to the parcel section. D. Permits issued by the Deputy Collector for Operations or its equivalent office for the transfer of cargo from one vessel to another. On the same permit and directly under the preceding endorsement, the receiving customs inspector shall make an endorsement to the effect that he received the cargoes on board the vessel to which he is assigned. Number 7. Shipside permits. Shipside permit, when duly processed and approved by the Collector of Customs or the Deputy Collector for Operations or its equivalent office, as the case may be, is an authority for customs inspector assigned on a vessel to allow the discharge of cargoes specified on the permit at shipside and no lighters underguarded. 3 kinds of shipside permits. The first one is regular shipside permit, issued by the Deputy Collector for Operations or its equivalent office as now presently required for all cargoes which belong to the categories of regular shipside cargoes under existing regulations. B. Special shipside permit. When cargoes do not belong to regular shipside cargoes, such as ballast, garbage provisions, watering, bunkering, vessel parts of repair, the ship's agents has to get the authority from the Collector of Customs prior to the processing and approval by the Deputy Collector for Operations or its equivalent office. C. Temporary shipside permit is a written authority to discharge cargoes at shipside and to lighter as per order of the Collector of Customs. The permit shall be forwarded direct to the Customs Inspector of the carrying vessel without entry being filed. This is issued only as an emergency measure so as not delay ship's operations. This permit is also issued on Saturdays, Sundays, and holidays when there are no offices to process the regular shipside permit. Several conditions are usually imposed in the issuance of this temporary permit, among which are: first, that the cargo is underguarded continuously until released by the Bureau of Customs. Second, that the lighter shall not be taken out of the customs designated barge pool area until the regular shipside permit is issued by the Deputy Collector for Operations or its equivalent office and is presented to the Customs Inspector of the carrying vessels. And last, that the Deputy Collector for Operations, Ship Piers and Inspection Division, PID, or its equivalent office be duly notified of the discharge under the temporary permit. Pending issuance of ship site permits. Pending issuance of ship site delivery permit, the customs inspector on board may receive written requests from consignees, countersigned by the ship's agents and approved by the collector of customs that certain designated goods be discharged into separate carriers. Under such circumstances, the same procedure is enjoined as in the case of shipside delivery, except that the consignment shall be held alongside the vessel underguarded, provided that in case no permit is received by the customs inspector on board within 72 hours from the time of discharge, the ship bay service section or its equivalent office shall be advised accordingly so that the cargo may be sent to the customs designated barge pool area, piers, wharf underguarded. 8. Transfer note or boat note shall be made in sextuplicate by the customs inspector on board for cargoes delivered at shipside. The transfer note shall show the following: A. Name of vessel and registry number. B. Name of lighter. C. Name of broker and or consignee. D. Shipside permit number. E. Marks and numbers. F. Kinds and description of goods. G. Time and date lighter left alongside the vessel. H. Names and signatures of customs inspector, customs guard in charge of lighter, and the patron of the lighter. I. Any other information and or remarks such as conditions set forth on the shipside permit by the collector of customs. B. Boarding sequence. The vessel upon arrival from a foreign port at the port of entry and after the issuance of the quarantine certificate or pratique by the Bureau of Quarantine shall be boarded in the following order. First is Customs Senior Boarding Officer, Customs Inspector, and Customs Guards assigned to the vessel. Number 2, Immigration Officer. 3, Department of Agriculture or Plant, Animal, Fisheries Quarantine Representative as required. 4, Other agencies or persons authorized by the Collector of Customs. C. Customs Boarding Team on Foreign Vessel. 1. The Customs Senior Boarding Officer shall place the vessel under customs control and surveillance by posting a customs inspector and customs guard thereon. Number 2. No person shall be permitted to go on board such vessel except the pilot, consul, health officials, immigration, and customs officers without the permission of the customs inspector on board of vessel. Number 3. No tugboat, rowboat, or other watercrafts shall be allowed to go alongside the vessel to ferry any person to or from the vessel without a permit from the collector of customs or his duly authorized representative. Number 4. Unauthorized tugboats, rowboats, and other watercrafts shall keep away from such vessel engaged in foreign trade at a distance of not less than 50 meters. D. Actual time of arrival, ATA of foreign vessel through E2M custom systems. After boarding formalities, the E2M OIC of Piers and Inspection Division Base Service Section shall input the actual time of arrival from the boarding information sheet submitted by the Customs Boarding Officer. E. Submission of Supplemental Cargo Manifest. Supplemental E-Manifest submission is treated as non-compliant late submission and shall be subject to penalty as stated in Part 2, Section 14C of this manual. Supplemental E-Manifest must be submitted in hard copies and electronic form within the period prescribed in CAO 6-2007 and CMO 37-2009. Otherwise, the shipment subject of the supplemental manifest will be considered unmanifested and subject to seizure proceedings. F. Unloading of cargoes. 1. Containerized. A. Discharging of containerized cargoes shall be authorized upon issuance of a general permit by the Customs Senior Boarding Officer. B. Thereafter, unloading of containers shall commence. C. During unloading, the Customs Inspector, Customs Guard on board foreign vessel shall verify the container numbers against the discharging sequence. Letter D. Customs Inspector, Customs Guards shall check, inspect if container seals are intact. E. Submit discharging report shall be submitted upon completion of the unloading operation. Number 2. Bulk and break bulk. The clearance of cargoes for bulk and break bulk cargoes, shipments such as liquids, chemicals, petroleum products, and all other cargo shipped in bulk, break bulk, the duties and taxes of which are normally determined by weight, shall be governed by the pertinent regulations, more particularly CAO 3-2010 and CMO 18-2010 on procedure for bulk and break bulk cargo clearance enhancement program mandated under Administrative Order number 243 as amended by AO 243A. The said CA and CMO allows under certain conditions the filing of import entries and payment of proper duties, taxes, and other fees prior to the travel of the vessel in the Philippine port of destination and immediately cause the discharge and the withdrawal of the same from customs premises and or custody, provided that the declarations in the import entries are confirmed by the load port survey report, and upon presentation of the proof of payment of duties, taxes, and other fees, as well as compliance with other prerequisites for valid importation. 2.1 Unloading of bulk and break bulk cargoes at shipside. Shipside discharge of cargoes shall be authorized only upon presentation of necessary shipside permit issued by the Deputy Collector for Operations. Upon receipt of the shipside permit, the customs inspector assigned on board shall A. Verify the subject shipment covered by the shipside permit against the inward foreign manifest as to the correctness of marks and numbers, quantity, kind of merchandise, weight, and etc. B. Issue a transfer note in septuplicate covering the shipside mentioned on the permit, setting forth the conditions and or requirements imposed by the Collector of Customs on the face of the shipside permit. C. Assign a customs guard to check the shipside permit so that only those authorized to be discharged are unloaded. D. Assign a regular customs guard to underguard the lighter with the cargoes if the permit so stipulates. E. When bulk cargoes are to be discharged unto lighters, the customs inspector shall not allow any cargo to be unloaded without first obtaining the 2-inch immersion table of the lighter from the patron. Duties of customs inspectors relative to import cargo. A. Unless the Collector of Customs permits their discharge into lighter or carriers to subserve public interest, all vessels arriving from foreign port shall discharge their import cargo at official designated piers. B. All cargoes from vessels that go alongside the piers, except hereinafter specified, shall be discharged thereon, and no check or accounting shall be undertaken by the customs inspector on board of the vessel, except to satisfy himself that the cargo is actually thereunto discharged and that the ship's checker is actually checking the cargo being discharged. C. All import cargoes discharged at shipside shall be checked by customs guards detailed for that purpose by the customs inspector on board, and for each carrier, the said customs inspector shall accomplish a transfer note showing the quantity and description of the cargo in each lighter or carrier. A transfer note shall always accompany such cargo, and information regarding damaged cargo shall be noticed in the column for remarks. D. The customs inspector on board the vessel shall permit shipside delivery upon receipt of the shipside delivery permit, provided transportation facilities for the cargo described therein are available. He shall detail a customs guard to take an accurate account of the number of packages and their marks and numbers. E. In cases where a discrepancy occurs between the check of the customs guard and that one of the other checkers on board as to the number of packages discharged into a carrier for shipside delivery, the customs inspector on board shall detail the same customs guard to accompany the carrier and recheck the cargo as it is being discharged at the consignee's warehouse or wharf. F. The delivery of cargo at shipside is the most important duty of the customs inspector. He shall take every precaution to avoid mistakes. He shall read every permit carefully to ascertain the kind and quantity of the cargo that he has authority to deliver. G. The customs inspector on board may also receive written permits from the Collector of Customs or Deputy Collector for Operations to send cargo for transfer to banded warehouses, in which case he shall cause the goods to be checked by marks and numbers. Transfers notes in duplicate shall be duly accomplished, and the original and duplicate thereof delivered to the customs guards in whose charge the consignment will be sent to the banded warehouse indicated in the permit. H. Special permits are issued to send certain designated cargoes to the customs house. Under this circumstance, the goods together with the transfer note covering such cargoes shall be sent underguarded to the base service section, PID, or its equivalent office. I. Packages manifested as parcels and those containing valuable goods, if the carrying vessel did not dock alongside the pier, wharf, shall be sent to the base service section, PID, or its equivalent office on the boarding officer's launch, if possible. If not, on the agent's launch, underguarded. J. Parcel listed articles shall be properly accomplished on BC form number 174. Accompanying transfer notes shall be accomplished giving the marks and numbers and the names of consignee. K. Goods from a foreign port may be transferred directly from the carrying vessel to another vessel engaged in the costwise or foreign trade upon receipt of written permission from the Collector of Customs. Detailed instructions in regard to such cargo are given in Section 17 and 18 of this manual. L. Importations of arms and ammunition shall be discharged immediately from vessel with proper transfer note to be sent to and received at the Customs Police Division for safekeeping and for proper disposition. M. Goods remaining on board any vessel after the expiration of the period for discharge and not reported for transshipment to another port may be unladen by the customs authorities and stored at the vessel's expense. Customs inspector must see to it that all cargo destined for the port must be discharged at the port unless otherwise permitted by the collector to remain on board underguarded if the vessel should clear for other local ports. Instructions to customs inspectors relative to carriers receiving import cargo. A. No cargoes shall be discharged at shipside into open carriers except those authorized for delivery thereat under existing customs rules and regulations. All other cargo shall be discharged into secured lighters, capable of being locked and sealed with customs seals. B. Carriers alongside a vessel having cargo that is under customs reservation shall not be permitted to shift to another vessel to receive cargo unless authorized by the Collector of Customs or the Deputy Collector for operations of the port. C. Empty carriers shall not be permitted to lie at night alongside a government pier or a vessel moored thereto or a vessel anchored in the harbor or be attached to such piers or vessels by cables or ropes or be attached to partly loaded carriers which may be alongside or fastened to such pier or vessel with import or export cargo, nor to carriers brought alongside to receive import cargo or discharge export cargo while the cargo on the pier or vessel is being worked at night. D. Laden or partially laden carriers at shipside containing import cargo shall not be permitted to leave the vessel without permission from the customs inspector on board, except in cases of emergency. In such circumstance, they shall be locked at the seal and placed under guard. E. All merchandise and other movable articles on board a vessel not included in the cargo manifest or ship stores shall be included in the list of ship stores. If not so included at the time of boarding, they shall be checked, a supplementary list prepared, and then sealed as part of the ship store. F. The customs inspector shall, as soon as practicable, after a vessel has been placed in his charge, verify by personal inspection the seal of the ship stores which may be broken. Ships firearms, except in unusual cases, shall not be placed under seal, but a check shall be taken of them, which shall be verified before the vessel sails to ensure that no arms have been unlawfully landed. G. Ship stores may be discharged under the same conditions as other cargo, but the written permission of the quarantine officer shall be presented to the customs inspector before the discharge is permitted upon the receipt of a permit or approved application for the transfer of ship store directly from one vessel to another of the same line. The customs inspector on board shall send it under customs guard with transfer note. H. An excess of supply in ship store in vessels arriving from foreign ports and all articles purchased abroad for sale on board a vessel as saloon stores or supplies are dutiable, but all ship stores and saloon store or supplies not in excess of the proper requirements of the vessel in her voyage outside of the Philippines shall not deem dutiable. 2.2. Unloading of cargoes at dockside. Import cargoes. All cargoes discharged at the dockside from a vessel shall not be accounted for by the customs inspector. However, a customs guard on each working hatch must see to it that the ship's checker is on board making a tally of each sling, and if a sling goes down without a tally, the customs guard must stop the discharge from the hatch until such time that the checker does his job correctly. Passengers' baggage, parcel list, and crew's personal effects. A. The customs inspector shall cause the immediate discharge of all baggage, parcel cargoes, and articles brought in by the ship's crews and passengers for discharge at the pier. B. The customs inspector shall remind the ship officer or the purser of the vessel, if necessary, that baggage and parcels must be discharged promptly and have same transferred underguarded to the Office of Base Service Section PID or its equivalent office, where proper receipt will be noted on the face of transfer note. Subject for examination by customs examiners. C. If baggage and parcels are to be discharged into a carrier in the stream, the customs inspector shall assign a customs guard to underguard such baggage and parcels to the office of the base sections, PID or its equivalent office, where the receiving customs personnel in charge thereof will sign. Lastly, for purposes of determining whether in cargo or entrusted shipments of merchandise or articles from abroad be included in the parcel list, BC Form number 174 hereunder is the criteria. Section 16. Departure. A. Documents, permits. 1. Documents required for exportation. 1.1 in general. A. Export declaration. B. Commercial invoice. C. Packing list. D. Export permit for regulated cargoes. 1.2. Additional documents for required. A. CBW shipments, transfer note, certificate of identification, and certificate of inspection and loading. B. PISA shipments, PISA transfer note, and PISA tally sheet. C. Provincial loading, transit cargo manifest. D. Constructive warehousing and immediate exportation. Previous import entry and internal revenue declaration, re-exportation bond, and transshipment permit. E. Special permit to load, latter request for shipping lines and list of containers intended for loading. 2. Inspector's certificate of lading, report of customs inspector on board. The inspector's certificate of lading is accomplished by the customs inspector on board of a carrying vessel for all conventional export cargoes loaded into vessels. The inspector's certificate of lading shall be accomplished in 5 copies and signed by the customs inspector on board vessel. He shall submit the original copy of the inspector's certificate of lading together with the working copies of the export declaration permits covered by the report to the export division, processing office, or its equivalent office concerned within 5 working days after the departure of the carrying vessel to which the conventional export cargoes are loaded. Number 3. Customs clearance of foreign vessel. For purposes of clearances of a vessel, the following documents shall be presented to the PID clearance section prior to the issuance of clearance. First is BOC OPM Form Number 12, Outward Foreign Manifest 4 copies, 1 original copy, 3 photocopies. B. BOC OPM Form Number 10, Oath of Master in Manifest in Clearance for a foreign port, 4 copies, 1 original copy with customs documentary stamp, 3 photocopies. C. BOC OPM Form Number 11, Oath of Master to Foreign Vessel clearing without passengers, 4 copies, 1 original copy with customs documentary stamp, 3 photocopies. D. BOC OPM Form Number 2, Clearance of Vessel to a Foreign Port, 2 copies. First, original copy, customs copy with customs documentary stamp. Second, original copy, master of the vessel's copy with original seal and signature of the collector of customs or his duly authorized representative. E. BOC OPM Form Number 3, Clearance of Customs Inspector assigned on board in 3 copies. First copy for clearance officer, second copy for the shipping agent, third copy for the customs inspector on board. F. BC Form Number 88, Statistics Supplemental in 4 copies. G. Bureau of Quarantine Clearance for outgoing vessels. H. Land Quarantine Clearance. I. Post Office Clearance. J. Request for Customs Clearance by Shipping Agency signed by the Customs Inspector concurring that the vessel in which he is assigned is ready to sail for foreign port. K. The register and shipping articles if the vessel is of the Philippine registry. I. The consular certificate of entry if the vessel is of foreign registry when required. D. Stopping and loading of cargoes. 1. Containerized 1.1 Instruction relative to stopping of containerized export cargoes. A. Upon the issuance of the authority to load, the export declaration permits duly processed at the export division or its equivalent office shall be forwarded to the Customs Container Control Division or its equivalent office by exporters, shippers, or customs representatives. B. Notice of stopping shall be submitted at least 24 hours in advance, indicating therein the kind and quantity to be stuffed, the container number to which cargoes shall be stuffed, the time stuffing will start, the address where stuffing will be done, and the name of the exporter, shipper. C. The assigned stopping inspector shall not allow stopping of export cargoes into the container van unless the duly processed export declarations permits of the cargoes to be stuffed shall have been presented with the authority to load stamped thereon. D. The assigned stopping inspector shall supervise the actual stopping which shall be conducted in the presence of representatives from all parties concerned. E. Upon completion of the conduct of stopping, the assigned stopping inspector shall affix his signature on the stopping report sequence attesting to the fact that the cargoes were indeed stuffed into the container. In case of stopping at CYCFS outside custom zone, he shall issue a transfer note with cargo details and the cargo underguarded by the CYCFS customs guard for delivery to the loading inspector assigned to the carrying vessel. Duties and responsibilities of the stopping inspector. First, the stopping inspector shall supervise the actual stopping at the place where it shall be conducted. Second, he shall see to it that only those export cargoes with duly processed export declarations, permits with the authority to load, shall be allowed to be stuffed into the container van. Third, he shall ascertain that the accompanying supporting documents, attachments to export declarations, permits are complete and correspond to what has been declared therein. Fourth, he shall make sure that any discrepancy in the export declarations, permits, as against the export cargoes to be stuffed is rectified accordingly. Fifth, upon completion of the stuffing, he shall ascertain that the doors of the container 1 are closed, locked, and properly sealed. 6. In case of stopping at CYE, CFS outside customs zone, he shall issue a transfer note with cargo details. 7. Upon the departure of the vessel to which the container van was loaded, he shall accomplish the inspector's certificate of lading. 8. As to warehousing export shipments, he shall certify and sign the certificate of inspection and loading, and shall perform such other duties that may be assigned to him from time to time by his superiors. 3. Inspector certificate of lading report of stopping inspector. The stopping inspector shall accomplish the inspector's certificate of lading, specifying the number of containers and description of goods appearing on each of the export declaration, permits, noting in the remarks column the van number opposite the cargoes contained in one export declaration permit. H. Duty, requirements, and overtime work conditions. All incidental expenses, allowance, meal, and transportation allowances attendant to the services rendered by the stopping inspector for the conduct of actual stopping shall be for the account of the inspector, shipper, and or CYCFS operator served. 1.2. Stopping of containers in customs banded warehouses. When export cargoes are to be stuffed in containers at shipper's custom banded warehouse, the stuffing shall be supervised by the warehouseman. Upon completion of stuffing, the warehouseman shall seal the container and take note on his transfer note the number of the container, the kind and quantity of its contents, and also state therein that the same is to be transferred from the customs banded warehouses to the distinct port of loading. Customs guard assigned to the customs banded warehouse shall underguard the container until properly received by the Customs Container Control Division or its equivalent office loading inspector. 1.3. Loading of bulk and break bulk export cargoes at ship side. A. Loading of export cargoes shall be effected only upon presentation to the customs inspector on board a duly approved loading permit. The customs inspector on board must see to it that the name of the carrying vessel stated in the loading permit is correct. B. All cargoes at ship side shall have appropriate permits for such loading. The customs inspector shall take note of the names of lighters where the export cargoes are loaded, specifying the marks and numbers, and must see to it that was loaded conform to the number of packages appearing on the export entry. C. Loading of bulk cargoes at ship side shall be subject to weighing. The importer concerned shall make a request for the assignment of a customs guard to check the actual weighing of such bulk cargoes in their respective warehouses prior to loading on barges. D. Loading of containers, whether loaded or empty at ship side, from lighters should not be allowed because of the difficulty of checking the numbers and contents of loaded containers should verification be required. All containers, whether loaded or not, should be loaded from the pier. 1.4. Instructions relative to loading of containerized export cargoes. A. The loading inspector assigned to the carrying vessel shall verify and ascertain that the export declarations, permits with container numbers indicated therein have duly processed at the Customs and Container Control Division or its equivalent office, duly signed by the Chief Customs Container Control Division or his duly authorized representative. B. The loading inspector shall not allow the loading of containerized export cargoes into his assigned vessel without the corresponding duly processed export declarations, permits with the authority to load stamped thereon. The loading inspector shall allow the loading only upon presentation of an authority to load by the following. First, Export Division for regular exports, special permit to load, local transshipment, CDW export shipments, and PISA shipments. Second, Export Coordination Division for export declarations processed by ECD for provincial loading. Third, Office of the Deputy Collector for operations for constructive warehousing and immediate exportation and foreign transshipments, permits, and CCCD for SPL empty containers. C. The loading inspector shall make sure that the container to be loaded are intended to be his assigned vessel and for that particular voyage of the vessel. D. Duties and responsibilities of the loading inspector. First, the loading inspector shall inspect and see to it that all containerized export cargoes are covered by duly processed export declarations, permits prior to loading. 2. He shall sign and submit the sequence of loading prepared by the shipping agent to the inspector on board carrying vessel. Number 3. He shall prepare and sign the inspector certificate of lading and forward the same to the export division, processing office, or its equivalent unit concerned, together with copies of approved export declarations, permits within 5 working days from the departure of the vessel. 4th, he shall certify and sign certificate of inspection and loading 24 hours after the departure of the vessel for warehousing shipments, and he shall perform such other duties that may be assigned to him from time to time by his superiors. E. Inspector certificate of lading, report of loading inspector. After completion of loading, the loading inspector assigned to carrying vessel shall within 5 working days after the vessel departure accomplish the inspector's certificate of lading and attach therewith properly endorsed export declarations, permits to be submitted to the export division, processing office, or its equivalent unit concerned. F. Duty requirements and overtime working conditions. The District Collector of Customs may authorize overtime services when the interest of the service so requires. The overtime services rendered by the loading inspectors are to be paid by the shipping agent, exporter, shipper, as the case may be, pursuant to the rates provided for by the regulations. 2. Bulk and break bulk. 2.1. Loading of export cargoes at dockside. Export permits covering export loading shall be presented to the customs inspector prior to actual loading. The customs guard shall make a tally of the actual packages, containers being loaded, checking the numbers of the packages, marks and numbers against the export entry presented. The customs inspector shall have no authority to inspect or open the goods being loaded unless otherwise authorized in writing by the collector of customs. 2.2. Loading of bulk and break bulk export cargo. A. The customs inspector on board the vessel shall permit the lading of export cargo only upon presentation of an authority to load issued by the following. First, Export Division, One-Stop Export Documentation Center for CBW shipments, regular exports, and PISA. Export Coordination Division ECD for export declarations processed by ECD for provincial loading. Last, Office of the Deputy Collector for operations for constructive warehousing and immediate exportation and foreign to shipment permit. B. For all exportations loaded at shipside, the exporter will send to the customs inspector on board of the vessel through the patron of the carrier a note or conduce with which will show: first, name of the vessel to which the cargo is consigned; second, name and license number of the carrier; third, number of bags, bales, cartons, etc. it contains; fourth, name of the exporter and number of the export declaration. C. As it is being loaded, export cargo shall be checked by marks and numbers if any, except shipments of bulk cargoes. The customs inspector on board must see to it that only those authorized on the loading permit are to be loaded. The customs guard assigned to supervise loading of exports must see to it that each export declaration presented for loading must be accompanied by a guard's check report made by him. D. When export cargo weight on shore under customs supervision is exported, no quantity in excess of the weight declared shall be received on board. However, if the weight of the total number of packages loaded is less than the weight declared, the customs inspector on board shall make note of this fact on the export declaration, which shall be attested by the ship officer of the vessel. E. Upon completion of lading, the customs inspector on board shall execute the inspector's certificate of lading in 5 copies. He shall see to it that all export declarations presented to him for loading are all accounted for, and all the cargo stated therein have been fully loaded. Otherwise, he shall make a report of discrepancy when such cargo appearing therein the permit are short shipped. 2.3. Loading of passengers, baggage, crew personal effects. The customs inspector on board shall not examine incoming passengers' baggage. However, if no examiner is on hand during nighttime, Sundays, and holidays, the customs inspector on board may inspect and pass the hand-carried personal effects of incoming passengers, retaining on board articles, goods, and effects subject to duty and or tax, which should be sent to the office of the base service section, PID, or its equivalent office under transfer notes and underguarded. The customs inspector shall also render transfer notes, and on the face of the original of which the receiving customs personnel in charge at the office of the base service section, PID, or its equivalent office shall indicate his receipt. Section 17. Customs Transit. customs transit by overland transportation shall be subject to such additional conditions as proper customs authorities may impose, provided it shall be undergirded until received by the collector of customs or deputy collector for operations at the port of destination, and provided further that the compartment where the cargo is stored or each and every package thereof be sealed with customs seal. There are 4 kinds of customs transit operation. A. From port of entry to another port of entry as exit point for outright exportation. B. From port of entry to another port of entry, inland customs office. C. From inland customs office to port of entry as exit point for outright exportation. Last is from one port of entry, inland customs office, to another port of entry, inland customs office. Section 18. Transshipment. A. Special instruction to customs inspector relative to the discharge of transshipped cargo. First, goods from a foreign port may be transshipped direct from the carrying vessel to another vessel engaged in the coastwise or foreign trade upon receipt of written permission from the collector of customs. Number 2. When a foreign transshipment permit authorizing the transfer of cargo from a foreign port is received by a customs inspector on board of a foreign vessel, he shall permit the discharge of the consignment, causing it to be checked by marks and numbers. A description of the consignment shall appear in the permit or in a list attached, and the utmost precaution shall be taken that no cargo is discharged on its authority other than that described therein. 3. Bulk and breakbulk cargoes for foreign transshipment shall either be discharged directly into the receiving vessel if it comes alongside, or otherwise transshipped to it in lighters or discharged at the pier of eventual loading to the receiving vessel. In the latter case, only lighters capable of being secured, locked, sealed, customs accredited, and insured shall be used. 4. Containerized cargoes for foreign transshipment shall be discharged at the pier for eventual loading to the receiving vessel under the same condition stated in Section 15A, item number 2 above. B. Instructions relative to foreign transshipment by CCD. After having been duly processed at the Deputy Collector of Operations, the foreign transshipment permit in case of containerized cargoes with its supporting documents shall be coursed through the Customs Container Control Division or its equivalent office for posting of container numbers and their eventual loading. The loading inspector assigned to carrying vessel shall verify the correctness of the container numbers indicated in the permit prior to loading of transshipment cargoes on board the carrying vessel. Section 19. Transfer of imported cargo to outside CYCFS by CCCD. After having been duly processed at the office of the Deputy Collector for Operations, the permit to transfer to outside CYCFS shall be coursed through the Customs Container Control Division or its equivalent office for posting of container numbers and their eventual transfer. The permit to transfer to outside CYCFS shall then be transmitted to the office of the ship PID or its equivalent office.